I'm back. The other session, the other session's just wrapping up, so in
That's
just a
fine.
moment.
Mhm.
I'll be right here, but you can go ahead and do your thing, and I'll just go next.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Elizabeth Singleton, and I think this is my sixth or fourth presentation I've done. I was supposed to be retiring. I'm retiring in good faith of knowing that I can retire a little bit later on. So I think the last time I did this, we had a lot of technical difficulties, and so this time I'm hoping it goes a little better. Um, but I'm back, and I'll explain to you why I haven't yet retired from our last conversations that we had. But thank you for joining me today. And today I'm going to be talking about a project that we're working on for the city of Avondale, and I'll give you a little presentation overview on that, and then we can go into details. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand, I believe. I'm not still familiar with all these, or leave a question, a comment. I will have a Q&A at the end of this if you have questions. So I really focus on building communities. I owned a manufacturing facility that we built tiny homes. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll get past who I am. And I don't have control over my slides, so bear with me. So I started off in advocacy for housing for the homeless, for those who are veterans, and just for housing in general. So when I think of affordable housing, I think about housing I can afford, not is it a poor man's house or if it's in a ghetto. No, it's housing that I can traditionally afford, that is safe and clean for me. It has nothing to do with if I live in a impoverished community or not. So affordable housing to me is housing that the community who built you up from foundation, these cities, from the foundation up, those community members can still afford where they're living. And so that's affordable housing. So I was promoting both affordable housing for all, and then really focusing on those who were mentally ill and veterans. During that process, I came across, you see, this is like my protesting, because our shelters were closing and they have beds everywhere. And that was that period of time. This actually got me into tiny homes, because at this event, we did months and months of working with our city to try to get housing available. They were kicking all these homeless out in the streets, which from the shelters, which we didn't have a clue for. But at the end of that, we wind up saving the shelter and getting housing available for people who were veterans. Basically, majority of them were veterans, into some type of housing, who were working. And while we were down there feeding the homeless, my daughter was like, why are we keep coming down here feeding these same homeless people? Why don't we build them tiny homes? And I was like, what is a tiny house? And that's when the whole thing started for me to start working in the field of tiny homes. I looked at all types of models, and I typically have this slide that I totally forgot to put in, which is what the city thinks and what I think. You can go to the next slide. But I didn't put that in today. I totally forgot. I always have it in, but city thinks we're always building some little box, attached to a bicycle. And that's typically what we're not trying to build. We were trying to build affordable quality housing. And so their imagination is back in the old days. And they're still, and like I say all the time, that type of housing is perfectly okay. But what I work for now is advocating for housing change. The picture of me standing by the fence on closer to the end is we were getting our first permit to actually build a tiny house on a site. And that's on wheels and foundation. So we were getting our first permit and going through that process. So that's enough about me. I can go on forever for days. I only have an hour this time. I wanted to keep it short so I can be as most intimate with you as possible, but give you enough details on a project I'm working for that really has has a lot of us questioning and saying, like, can we all do this? So anyways, we can go to the next slide. And so this project right here is a project we are working on. It is another veteran home. We just put it in for pictures, but we are breaking grounds on that as well coming soon. So we can go to the next slide. So the project we are currently working on, we are building it started off as a tiny house community, but the city realized that they wanted a little bit more space in the home. So they're now micro homes. So if you don't know the difference from a micro home and a tiny house, is a tiny house consists of the definition, it's in our whatever we actually choose, but for a tiny house, the definition is 100 to 400 square feet, and anything above 400 square feet is between 400 and 600 square feet is considered a micro house, but they fall in the same guidelines of tiny homes. So that's the difference. So we we went from originally being sought after for a tiny house. And because of what the additional requirements that the city needed to meet, we went into a micro housing. So this was actually considered a contract that went out. So a request for proposals, a request for qualified vendors. So I have to say that I am very thankful to have been awarded this contract. Never thought in a million years, because I always give the foundation for the contracts. I give the resources and the preparations, and then someone's friends always get it. But it's okay. I've never been jealous of that situation. I just feel like, hey, at least we're getting tiny homes or we're getting housing done, But this time being, I'm a general contractor, commercial and residential. So I did that. Recently got my license last year. After being in this role and having a manufacturing company, I was like, I should go ahead and get my license. So went and got my license, but this contract came out. The city had requested a proposal for tiny homes to build a project model that would consist of 3 to 6 tiny homes that would if the project model would go great, then it would turn out to be almost 200 homes that they would build to end homelessness or to help those who in transition of homelessness or affordable housing in their community. So the contract was awarded on December of last year. And again, like I said, it is a big deal to get a government's contract, especially for tiny houses. And so I'm very pleased with my team that we were able to do this. And we began our design in January, and we've been going through that through January and March, and now we are completing our permits. So I'm going to tell you, how much time is that? So I'm on a project right now that we're on almost on our second year now, waiting for our permits. We got our permits in less than 2 months. So it's because this project is very unique. If we can go to the next page, the city is actually the planning department is actually the one building this project. So basically, we are like their clients, or they're like our clients. And so the planning and zoning department is actually working hands in hand with us to move everything forward, which I've never seen in any project I've ever done. And because this is their baby, this is their team. They want this micro house community, and they are calling it a tiny house community, to be developed for a pilot project, so we can build out more. So I'm noticing how quick the turnaround is in getting this process done. So what we are doing is in a couple of phases. So we had to define the project. We had to show schematic designs, which means that those are architectural. See the design you see on the side, that's like an schematic design. We had to go through the design phase. That means we were in meetings every day with the city to create this design that they wanted. And then we are also doing the contract document. So for each phase, we do a contract document stating how we're going to build these tiny homes and if we have the money to bid them. And then once we agree upon a biddable, which is called a GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price, we're going now into a bidding phase for other contractors to bid on the site. And then we go to a competitive. So right now, everything's off the chain in the market. So everything changes left and right. So we're in the middle of this process right now. And then our construction phase. So we are actually control of everything. So we are considered a design build team for this project. So we can go to the next one. So this is the lovely site where we are doing this. So the city wanted to look at sites around their area that they could repurpose for housing. So this is actually a parking lot that is being repurposed to build these homes in hopes that when this project goes through, we'll be able to build more homes. So if you see, this project is on a 45 by 450 square foot parking lot space. So we can go to the next slide. So it is currently a parking lot that is across the street from their resource center, which the people who will be going through this project, this pilot project, will be using the resource center, and then they'll be living in these homes as the city see if this is financially viable for them to continue on. So the good thing I love about it is that we are taking an existing space that nobody's using this space, and we're creating housing. And what better area of 45 feet wide, and it's 400 feet long. So we don't have a lot of space. So we need to use as much space as we possibly could on the project to create the small units. So we can go to the next slide. So if you have any questions, I'm hoping I can read them somewhere, but you can stop me at any time if I'm going too fast or you don't understand or you want me to go back to something, let me know. And I think, I don't know if it's in the comment section. I don't have, this is not my shared screen. So Zach, you're gonna have to let me know if there's any. So this is the site plan, and it's an overlay site plan. So it's overlaid on the parking lot. So this is not the full parking lot, by the way. We only have 450 square feet of the actual, I think it's like 45 by 700 square feet. So we only have 450 square feet of this parking lot to build out phase one and hopefully phase two. The city may not even want phase two because they may be happy with the project and want to move on to build more. So, and if you see on, well, it would be, if you're looking on my right side of facing this way, there's the three homes. The first phase is closer to the north of the property, and we this is what's considered an architectural site plan. So it has a lot of stuff on it because it's talking to the city and it's telling the consumer what we are looking to do. So unfortunately, we can't zoom up on this, but I do have it in another space where we go over the civil plan, and it kind of has it where this has a playground on the site. Each house has a 15-foot yard, so each house has 15 foot in between them, and we're right up against the back of the fence of this site. So we didn't have much of a backyard, but we were able to give them a 15 by 36 foot backyard side yard for the homes. We made them, the reason why we had to go bigger with the homes is because we did have to make them handicap accessible, and so making them handicap accessible, put in more, we went up to a maximum size. So with the units on the site, it's also parking. We're reusing the parking. So we're saving as much as the previous parking lot and creating the parking on that. And creating some more natural resources on the site. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just let me tell you, this is a civil plan, which everyone forgets to get. So I wanted to go back to making sure in this, I want to also explain to you that I hear a lot of people tell clients to just go get some plans, some architectural plans, and call it a day. But without a civil plan, you really can't do your project. And if you don't plan that along with your architect, it could really cost you money and time in the end. So this civil plan tells the city uh, where how water is draining off the property, how your sewer from your property to the city lines are going to drain down into the sewer, how your electric, so from the we have to work with our power companies to bring in electric to the site. So how we're going to bring that onto the site. So it basically has the whole engineering plans of the everything that's underground that people typically don't look at. These are what civil plans are. It tells you actually what is the actual site size of your property. If you're able to have maybe a swimming pool sitting on top of your house around it, because is it going to be structural and civil will work together. And I have to tell you, just keep a note when you're doing a site on wheels, because I'm doing one on wheels and on foundation right now. You're going to need an architect, a civil engineer, MEP, which is called mechanicals. So it's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer. It's all of these engineers put together, and then you need a structural engineer. So depending if you're going to do yours on wheels, then you should already have a structural engineer who engineered your homes. Especially if you're planning to get it permitted, you have to make sure that it had a structural engineer stamp the plans. That's for your own safety too, because if you're doing it yourself, go ahead. Good to you. And I would still do it if I built my first, and I had a structural engineer give me something, because I didn't want to be driving down the street and my house flips over, and then what? I'm out of home. So we want to make sure. But people don't understand this cost. So I'm going to tell you what the cost was about for all the plans. And this wasn't because it was the city. We actually cut our prices. So it was about $40,000 just for plans, just for the architect, civil engineer, the traffic engineer, the mechanicals, electricals, and plumbing engineer, the structural, and all of these engineers to make this plan come together. It could cost money. Now, there are some companies that do it all in one, and they can lower your price. But I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, people really think that I'm watching HGTV, and no offense to none of the HGTV producers, but it's $10 to build a tiny house or build a community. No, it's not. Even if I was doing a single home, I would most likely have to get almost everything. I definitely would have to have a civil. Mechanicals and electrical can tend to be, if it's one small home, can always go under the architect, but the city might come back and tell you need it to be engineered. So just make sure that you understand that. So let's move on to the next slide. I hope this is great for you. So I thought I put this, I think I do have this blown up in the next one. So this is the picture you see on top is the resource center that's going to be next to this housing. So it's not like it's so commercial that people can't feel comfortable, because it's residential and commercial area. So this is what the model that the city chose. We gave them the little houses. I really wanted the gable roofs. I was like, yes, these little cute houses going to know. They wanted this nice modern, which is there. I love it. It's great. So it's a modern look to offset what the resource center looks like. So if we go to the next slide, I believe it's bigger for the floor plan. Oh, no, go back. Okay. You know what? I did that in my PowerPoint presentation. So I don't know if you can see the floor plan. Is there any way we can zoom in on that? Probably not. So I did put it bigger. If you come out of the presentation mode, you might be able to zoom up on it. Well, I hope you can see it. That's the floor plan. So we were able to get in under 600 square feet. We were able to get So we're about, I think, 590 altogether. So it's a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, um, micro home. So it's an individual all by itself. It's not a condo. It was structured out, so we were able to fit in. We took all the small appliances. I mean, the double. We have everything doing 3 or 4 things inside the home to make sure that we could. Meet the get as much of the maximum space that we could use, and create. Also, we had to make room for someone who was handicapped. So we instead of doing just one unit handicap, we just went with all the units, for handicap to provide services for those who have disabilities. So and some of the projects going forward, we may just be down to like 200 square feet. For this home, so they have a side yard, as you see. I hope you can see that. The side yard, and they have the walk, the sidewalk is basically right next to the street. So it's very, we had to really try to maximize the space. We really didn't have much room, and we still had to meet some of the city codes. Now, they were able to get us some variances, but we had to try to meet all these codes and create the same space that the city wanted. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, there it goes. Oh, you got it bigger. Did it come up? We must have skipped that. There it goes to show you. So it's a little bit bigger to show you like how much space that we have. We are able to get a queen size bed in one of the rooms, and then the other ones we made it to where it'd be a bunk bed. So we do have a high ceiling. So if you want to create the highest amount of space, as far as give yourself a small space. So we have a 100 square foot home, and it has 13-foot ceilings. Well, 12, it goes at a peak, but no one knows it's a 100 square foot home because it has a high ceiling. Now, you can also use your high ceiling for creating your loft. So it can create that extra housing space. So where you can have a loft, you can have a rolling loft. We have a couple of different types of lofts or hideaway lofts. But at that height, you definitely can have your loft, but have the height creates so much space in the room. So like one of our tiny houses on wheels, it's just straight up. We don't have all of these stairs and things in front of it because it's just straight up. And when people walk in, they're just like, oh my God, it's just so much space, but it's just creating a center height. So your first height when it comes in, creating that center height into your space. So, and this actually is a 10-foot slope down ceiling, but it's completely open. We have no attics. We have there's no ventilation going through it because the way that we use our wall systems, which I will show you, we go to the next slide, I believe. So this is the wall systems that we use to build, and they're called Wally Walls. It's a partner company of ours, and so we can build a tiny house. So the size that we're going for right now, we're going to be building in 4 to 6 hours. And so we can build it up and erect it and go about our way. So in less than that, but because people are new and learning it, we always give that extra time. When we know the system, when we have our workers, you can be done with this in like 2 hours and you got 3 homes done. So I do love the system. The reason why I like the system is because it's their insulated panels injected with graphite polystyrene. So you can run over these panels, but they're so light to pick up. This home right there's one of these homes in here. I was building it with another person, so it was 2 of us building it. These were very high, so these were like 18 feet. Going at the cantilever. So at the slope of the roof, the end of the roof, they were like 18 feet high. So, not the best on trying to manage the height on that, but they're very light, and it gives us, we don't need an attic. We never need an attic because we have that insulation that we have to the roof, to the ceiling, and we can build quickly. So this project, we have 11 weeks to build. And so we have to be in and out there and using the system. The only thing I do not like about the system is that some of the plumbing and stuff is not pre-plumbed into it. So if you're not used to using it, people tend to cut out all of the insulated foam and cut through the metal, which you don't have to because it has insulated channels that you can use for your plumbing and for your electrical. It's just that if you do not have an experienced person working on it, they just take all your insulation out. So that's the only thing I do not like, but I really do like the system. And it's quick, and I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm just letting you know this is what we're using in this project because we have a very short time from groundbreaking till completion. We have 11 weeks, and that's it. So, and that's building 3 homes, playground sets, parking lots, you name it. So, go ahead. You can go to the next one. I don't know what my time is. I don't hope I'm not rushing through this because I'm trying to get. So another thing that I love that they're allowing us to do is we can use a lot of the natural resources. So I always have most of my projects will use pallet wood, pallet wood and burnt wood to maximize especially if we're going for like a more modern look to give on the site. So it's actually going to have wood and stucco at the same time. So we were able to convince them to let us use some pallet wood on some of the fencing and some of the accent walls and things on the property. So it's going to be really nice. And, I just love using pallet wood, and especially if I create some type of fencing or some type of living environment, parking area, it's just good source of resource. So go to the next. I try to put in some of the mechanicals in this time because we always talk about how the difficulties, but I also want to talk about like building and understanding. So you can go to the next slide. I think all of this is pumping in. So we originally had a big unit on his for some reason. I don't know, but we went to the mini splits. We're not using this one per se because we don't want to be advertising for people. We're going to use 3 heads. So you have 3, in your mini split, you'll have 3 condensing heads that'll be in the house. So there'll be one in each bedroom and then one in the main part of the house. And that's all it needs. And it's going to be 25,000 BTUs. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically just the pressure, I believe, or how much pressure that it can bring into the home. If I remember, I'm probably wrong, but something to do with that. So it's just based on your house size. So with this square footage, we actually are using too much, but we'd rather have too much than come back. And that's another thing good with Wally Walls is that we're using the roof and the walls. We're at 42 in our insulation. So our value is at 42 instead of the regular 19. So, and some of our homes right now, they don't even use the AC until later in the year, or because after a while of it just being hot all the time, then they'll use it. But the bills are nothing. And I think we get more charged on the actual services and taxes than we actually sometimes get on the bill for the heating and cooling of the home. So the mini split units is actually what we found the most affordable. And because we don't have any duct system or duct work, which right now is everybody's having a problem finding duct work, by the way. So duct work, and we have no attics, then we're going with the mini split. And it's perfectly fine because they can adjust it by room instead of leaving, it on throughout the house. And we typically will use a mini split in smaller homes anyways. So you can go to the next one. I hope this is helping you. I just wanted to be a little bit more detailed on some of the things. So the groundbreaking schedule of this site. So we started in January. So we had our notice to proceed in January. We have gone through the plans and design phase, which is a back and forth phase and building your plans and how you want your community design, securing any funds. So they had a budget, but we needed to secure some more funds. And so in that process, that's what we've been doing in that time, a lot of meetings with the city. From May to July, that's where we're going to be doing our site development. So by next month, we are breaking grounds on this project. And we are due to be done July 30th, and then having some our opening in August. So the final inspections, everything should be completed by August. But they wanted to make sure that we broke grounds and we were mostly complete within their first fiscal part of their fiscal year, and then we can cover the rest of the costs in their second part of their fiscal year. So we just moved over the deadline because we weren't going to do a groundbreaking or not groundbreaking, but a final inspection in August. But because of some delays, we moved into August. So we can go to the next slide. And if you want to know the cost, so this is the cost breakdown. I was going to show you the whole billing form, but I would have to explain every single line for us to know. So I was like, well, why don't I just explain what it cost us per square footage? So the house themselves cost us $163.81 per square foot. So we were looking at about 22 or so a unit, 22 a unit at the time. So this number has changed just a little. When I did this presentation, it's changed a little because they added all the stuff back in because we had removed a lot of stuff and they wanted it back in. And then so on the ground per unit, it's costing us $52,000 worth of groundwork. So it's about when we add in. So if you see the 300, so the 379 is basically what that is costing us the site per square footage. So we are spending $379 a square foot to build up the site itself. So those are the real numbers. I just like to share with people because we always see these numbers that I get so upset with when they're talking about taking a tiny house, even on wheels, because these are the same prices, similar. If you're going to set your house on wheels, say on maybe a semi-permanent foundation, or just like you're going to set it, because I have a house right now I'm about to set out here, and people never tell them the truth about these costs, which gets upset. It just makes me upset. But these are your true costs when you're going to build. So this project will be costing us around $600. So our goal budget was $500,000, and we were in there. If we took out the playground and we really reused the parking lot, like we would be in that number. And that was some of the original numbers we went to. But because they want to give a better atmosphere and they do want people to feel nice. I mean, I understand we don't want to just like here's this nice tiny home and then the rest of the site looks like someone just rolled out a bed on it or something. So it is going to be a very, very nice site. I always say, like, let's do it nicely, and we can do it cost effectively. But with the add-in of the playground, and we took the playground out and brought it back in, and we've been trying to finagle all of this and going back and forth and see how we could stay within their budget, but we just couldn't stay in there. And with inflation, it was just almost impossible because every day, things are going up. And that's also what we have to understand. Like, things are going up. I remember when I started out, we were building tiny homes for $25,000, some $15,000 in cost. That's nowhere to be found right now. So, and I'm talking about on wheels. So, I mean, a trailer, a good one, if you're getting a good one, is $10,000 to $20,000. So, and there's trailers that are not, and I'm not saying they're terrible. We typically would have ours custom designed because we wanted to make sure that they met the engineering requirements. But if you're going to build a trailer or you're going to have it built, hopefully you'll have it built. Those are costs between like $8,000 to $10,000 right now, I believe. I don't know. We have someone that builds them for us. So, but this is the cost that is cost just per unit. So and when it says per unit, it doesn't mean like that's the completed unit. So that's not what that means. So the completed unit, for all of them, I think with the site work, the housing, it's going to be around $90,000 to be, 90. It runs between $90,000 to $100,000 per unit. So, I think that I don't know if this is my last slide because then I can take questions or we can run back over the slides. But I was trying to stay within this hour, and I wasn't really good at. Okay. So go big, go tiny. That's our slogan, or was was our slogan. I'm semi-retired, but now I'm getting this request again. I'm supposed to speak for FEMA if they still have the an affordable a tiny house as affordable option, and I want to be as honest as possible. It's affordable in a sense because we have two. We don't really have like standards to run off of. And right now, there's this battle between all these organizations right now trying to create these standards. I'm on the standard board, so let me just say for ASTM, so I'm not beating anybody down. But I really wish we would have some standards because it would be a lot more affordable for us. Just standards on just, making sure that we're having good structural designs and, water and, because if I start on building and then I go to the city and they're like, no, we want the steps like this, or we want you to, do the water this way. Because the city doesn't have, most of them don't have any guidelines or standards. And even on foundations, we were writing the codes for the foundations here. So, but anyways, everybody, I'm going to tell you something. I used to be heavy in the homeless community. Heavy. I mean, I lived and breathed the homeless community, going out at night and doing the best. And I spent millions in that community. And when I really started getting involved politically and looking at financials and looking at why we weren't coming up with solutions to housing, which we had all the solutions, we had all the reports, we did all the surveys, millions of dollars of surveys. We actually spent the money we could have ended homelessness on surveys and other government programs. And what I've noticed the most that so many people were fighting and bickering and no one could ever agree to anything. So, because it had to go one other person's way to another person's way. And we could never get anything done. We had the money and the resources and the education, you would think, but the fighting was the issue. And so right now, when I'm going through licensing and process, people don't have a clue because we have no standards, of what, we have the tiny house appendix Q, but that's not a standard. That's not a code. The city can say, okay, we can regulate the stairs on this. And I'm not putting it down because we are so grateful for it because that opened the door to a lot of things. But it doesn't help the city completely. So they cannot tell you how the water is supposed to be. So now, guess what? I have to go create these whole engineering plans. And so we definitely want to make sure that and that's why I love this about working directly with planning and zoning. I'm like literally walking over all the designs and getting everything, all the feedback, all in one place. And I have permits in 4 weeks, and that's unheard of, on these. And so I know the cities are capable of doing this, but they don't really have any goals. So while we're going through this, we're saying, okay, this is what the codes somewhat say. And can we add this? Can we change this? Can we do this? And then now that's becoming some form of guideline for the next projects we go through. But we really should have some form of agreeable standards. Not everybody's going to be happy, but at least we're going to be able to say, I can walk up and I have a checklist and I can get this done. I don't have to wait for somebody who just graduated from high school to tell me, should I have a garbage can right there? And if they're looking at the right property it costs a lot of money to go through permitting. So, just be honest, I'm just as real as possible. It's not cheap. They make this as difficult as possible, especially if they don't want it in their neighborhood. And it's not the people. It's not the people who I have never had a not in my backyard kind of conflict or anything. But I'm going to let you ask questions. If you want to come online, I don't know how to do it, but I think Zach does. You can ask questions. And because I can ramble, I love talking. So if you have any questions for me, or if you want to come online and say anything, okay. So do you want to give the mic? Zach, I don't know how to do that. Can I click on that? Nope, I can't do it. Is Zach available? Hello?
Yeah.
Someone's asking for the mic.
I just tried giving him access, but he didn't. There we go. He's trying to. I think you can do it, but I had clicked on it before you tried.
How do I do? Oh,
Yeah, there. You just clicked on it. I'll disappear again.
okay. Okay. So I don't, let me see if uh,
I think he's trying to connect right now. So
so we
sometimes it takes a little time because they have to like give permission to
have,
their browser.
well, I don't know. I can't get him to come on. So let me see. I think there's some questions uh, in the chat room. So $100,000 is under $100,000 still affordable? Yes, it is still affordable. I agree with that on those notes. Let's see. I think this person asked a question. I'm not sure if I got it. Um, I don't know how to do this mic thing, so I'm hoping I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah, no worries. I think you
Zach,
are
I
doing
see
it
people
correctly.
click on them, it doesn't work.
We can just go through some of the
Yeah.
questions if you want. I saw.
If you want to read them off, I don't have my glasses. So to tell you the truth.
No worries. I can go through the questions. I'll do that
Okay.
real quick.
Um, so I
Okay.
hope that, go ahead.
Okay. So let's see here. Somebody was asking, uh, do you have to worry about snow loads with the Wally walls?
No. So, I mean, you have to consider the snow lows, but they meet them. Wally Walls is out of Wisconsin. So, that's where they're building the most out of Chicago and Wisconsin. So they're dealing, a lot with that. So
Okay. And you said the R factor is 40
42,
R42. That's
correct.
in the walls and the ceiling.
Yeah, with the walls and the ceiling. So you have a very high, your R value rating is very high. And they've had that studied, and even our cities went ahead and approved it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. And then, and the Wally walls are essentially they're structurally engineered panels, right? They're SIPs.
Correct. They are structurally engineered panels, except for as with the SIPs, typically you will see your electrical or your plumbing included, where Wally Walls that does not occur.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Eric from Tiny House Society asked, "Can we contact you if we have a city that's interested in replicating your design/build sites?"
Yes, you can contact me. Give my email. You can contact me at I'm trying to see which email I want to give you that I'm actually going to answer today because I'm retired. So you can contact me at Elizabeth at buildushope.org. So I hope I said that. So that's my main email. So we build projects under our nonprofit. So our nonprofit builds. So we're licensed under a nonprofit and a for-profit. So it depends on the project. Typically for the cities, we try to do the nonprofit because we can work their numbers a little bit more. Well, not work their numbers. We can get stuff donated. So
For
yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Kathy Malone asked, "Are you aware of anyone working on plant-based replacement for
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
yeah, in the panels?"
Um. So I have seen, not plant based. I guess you would say paper is plant, it's a tree. So I've seen that. It does not have the fire safety rating as yet. So we do have actually two companies here who have been using that. So a recycled paper and hemp, I think it is. So that's where we're seeing as because we were looking at some of the environment sensitivity issues, and so, but it hasn't come to where at the rating that you would get for Wally Walls right now for the Pyrosine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then let's see. Eric Perez wanted to ask, or sorry, Ernest Perez wanted to ask. He was trying to grab the mic to ask the question of, could you explain the breakdown of the prices a little bit more, the differences between the 22,000, the 52,000, and the 92,000?
Yes. So when we look at the pricing overall, so the 22 would be just the structural loan for the tiny house, and then I believe it's the next one is like 50 something 52. That's for a tiny house mostly completed with your foundations and everything. And then the 90, between the 90, that is, you include the site work. So you're including, so that's where your 100 is. So you're including the site work, the landscaping, the lighting on the site, paving, anything like that. So you're including some of those numbers, not always the same numbers, but you're including on the site work that's actually at the house. So the parking lot, we would add a few more numbers and then we get our number. And I know it sounds strange, but if I can show you the whole thing, it will show you how you got 600,000. So the actual build of the project is about 530 with all the taxes and permit fees and stuff like that. That's where we got to 638. So I would say right now these are costing us about 92,000, and they may have some changes because we have some electrical APS transformer costs that we haven't calculated into that.
For sure, yeah, that makes sense. So the cost of like the mini split units would be inside of the like 52,000 type.
Correct. Of. Yeah. So all of that would be included within that that cost.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the 100,000.
Yes, that's Elizabeth at buildushope.org.
Yeah. And that 100,000 is actually pretty good. And because what we always tell people is that the price per square foot of like a kitchen, it's really, you're paying for like, a lot of the cabinets and this kitchen sink and the faucet and all that sort of stuff. But if you add an extra just, blank square foot, there's not really that much material and extra labor that goes into that. And so that's why when you shrink a home down, the price per square foot just naturally has to go up.
It really goes up. The refrigerator is like, and right now Home Depot, we were lucky. Home Depot had them for like $369, where they're typically $789 for a small, 4 times smaller than a 32-inch refrigerator. So the microwaves are more expensive, which we try to stick tiny, and sticking tiny does cost a little bit more. For majority of the stuff, even the sinks, sometimes the sinks can be higher. If you want a nice looking sink, that size, that could be higher. The cabinets, we have to get our cabinets specially made to come in, and thank God we have like a pro account where we can get multiple access to different pricing. But we could be able to have them special ordered by a cabinet maker, and it's just costing too much right now.
Yep, for sure.
So I don't know if there's somebody on here with us, but
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening with my camera right now, but you've been great today and in the past about sharing the all of the roadblocks that you run into in terms of finding out what the zoning codes are in particular areas and getting incorrect information and having things denied that maybe shouldn't be denied. And you are extremely knowledgeable and have a lot of resources. And I'm in Texas and part of several communities. And people are always going to their local, whatever the governmental agencies are.
Planning and zoning.
Especially in a lot of people have to do this in rural areas where there's barely any such thing as a county clerk or planning and zoning. And there are two things. One, most places don't have any regulations for tiny houses. They'll call using the term, I want to build a tiny house. What are the rules? And the rules don't normally have those words, tiny house.
Correct.
And then also people constantly get misinformation about everything. I mean, we had somebody here where they took the title of her home away and said she owed taxes on it and all kinds of things. So what advice do you have for people who are trying to follow this process of finding out what the rules are wherever they live, and getting, misinformation, and don't have lawyers or the resources that you've had to, to fight and win some of your battles?
Well, when I first started, I didn't have any of that. So it was a long process of just, so I'll tell you in the first process of that. So I always say when you call there, ask them what is the minimum requirement square feet for a dwelling unit. So if that would typically tell you if they have anything for regulations for a tiny house. So if they say my minimum requirement is 500 square feet, well, then okay, so do you use the tiny house appendix Q? If they say yes, if they've adopted it, then they do actually provide support and planning for individual homes under 400 square feet, which would be between 100 and 400 square foot. So now, if the county says, well, we don't have anything, because in Texas, a lot of places around Texas, they don't have anything. If it's uncorporated, then, I was buying property and we built some container homes down there. So if by starting that process, you're kind of seeing if they even have anything, if they like it, what's their square footage requirement. And then I would say, so, do you have anything for manufactured homes or if you're going to do it on wheels, tiny houses? Because they usually have requirements for manufactured homes, and they may place tiny homes on wheels as a manufactured home. So I would ask, do you have anything on that? And could they send it to you? They will email it. Most of them, they do. I mean, I've contacted them all over the place, and they'll email what the requirements are, and ask them to email. Then finally say, what is your requirements for what consider tiny homes, whether on foundation or movable, and ask them to email it to you. Because once they email it to you, now you can use that as your tool to, whether they say they don't have anything, and it's up to each design, because they can say that, or they say, yes, we have some rules here, we're gonna, let them email it to you, because then you can take a look at what they're saying. Now, how do you read that? It's always try, and I know it's bad, but if you don't have the money, but you may just contact an architect, and they'll answer those questions for free. I mean, they typically want your business, so they're trying to give you some understanding. So those are the things I would start at first. I don't just go into, do you let tiny houses on the property?
Right, because they'll always
because yeah. They may have those codes there already, but they just don't say tiny home. And that's another thing that people are getting like, oh, it's a small living, or they may call them a accessory dwelling unit. So you just say, what is your minimum requirement? And that can get you started from everything else. Because if their minimum requirement is meets your requirement, so if there's tiny homes that are on wheels that are 300 square feet. So, hey, if their minimum required is 100 square feet, well, you fit that. Or if it's minimum requirements at least 400 square feet, then what are they counting as space? So that's where I would start at first, is what is their minimum requirements, and don't start off with saying tiny house on wheels, because people freak out with that.
Right.
Yeah. So I hope that answers starting. And believe me, I didn't have a lot of money after I got in this business. Because it's like you go broke if you don't get the right answer. So it was a learning process of figuring out, and I tape them. I don't care. I tape them, and you don't have to tape them and say, hey, I got you on tape, but I tape them so I can type everything out, so I know exactly what they said, and then I email it back to them. Because it depends on who you talk to. You could have a tiny house or not. And that's just, they can be in the same space And one says no and the other one says yes. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thanks. And I was asking for everybody, not just people.
Yes. Yes.
That was good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. That definitely is very well worded. Like Loretta's kind of saying right there, and like you've been saying, the language can make or break the experience, and make or break if it's possible to do something on a piece of property. And that can definitely just kind of set off some red flags inside of some of their minds. But when you ask that question, like, what is your minimum requirement? It's allowing them to feel like they're in control and feel like they're in charge.
Yeah.
And yet you still get your question answered, and you can, press on with making your plan based around what they're going to allow. So
exactly. Yeah. And that's how I make my plan. And I always, if it says you can have an accessory dwelling unit, then say that's what it is, an accessory dwelling unit, and then go from there. So, yep. But I say people never buy it until you have 100% information. I know you want a tiny house, but that can be very costly to have something sitting. In some cases, they'll come and say, you can't even sit it in your own driveway or your backyard because it's not sitting on concrete. So don't waste your money before getting all the information.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, let's see. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Let's see. Jeff Adams had that that topical kind of question about our tiny homes on wheels, specific to be able to not have to deal with regulations and deal with regulators and whatnot. And I think that's obviously somewhat kind of controversial and depends on how gray people want to be. But I think it's obviously always best to be above board if you have the possibility. But also the fact that many RVs are parked illegally or wrongly.
Yeah.
I mean, tiny house.
Yep. What I tell people is basically what the codes are saying. Now, I would love to live back where we were riding horse and buggies. I wish we could go back to the Wild Wild West, but that's not what it is. Of course, I would love that we didn't have certain regulations, but I understand why. Have you ever seen a tiny house fall over in the middle of the street? Because the person has built it wrong, or they've have it top heavy. So I do understand those. I was planning to move to Tennessee or Texas, and there was like lots of locations that didn't care what you were building, as long as you weren't setting off bombs in your neighborhood. They didn't care what you were building. And then most of us live in an area where people do care, and it's not just the city; it's your neighbors. Your neighbors are calling on you, not just the city. So that's why you have some of these regulations. I would say I would love if we didn't have that, but that's not reality. So having reality, I don't want to build a tiny house and get ticketed or get my house taken away from me, or I can't stay in it because I have the city checking on me or the county checking on me all the time. Unfortunately, it's not realistic. So let's have some ones that can be realistic and that's not overbearing.
And there's also definitely benefits to regulations like that too, such as like, obviously we're heavily dealing with kind of the financing issue of especially tiny houses on wheels. But once they become like regulated, whether it's through ICM or something like that, it'll all of a sudden open up the floodgate of the ability for banks to finance.
That's the biggest thing right now. We are definitely looking at banks. Hello, someone's on there. Does she know she's on the mic?
I'm not sure. Kathy, can you hear us? It looks like she just muted. Or wait, no, she didn't. Kathy Malone, paging Kathy Malone. Looks like, spam call.
Okay, so Kathy, we're going to remove you from the stage.
Okay.
So we have 1 minute. So I'm going to say thank you guys again. And yes, it really depends on where you live at. So, with regulations, it's really going to, because our state is all over the place. Anyways, so I don't want to rush off, but I seem like I might be. So thank you again. I'll be retired next year again. And
so good.
At the same time. All right. Thank you guys. Love you. And we'll see you next year. We'll have some updates because we'll have all of these open for you.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Super
thank you.
excited. Awesome.
Elizabeth at buildushope.org. And we'll see you
Yep.
soon. Bless
That's
you.
right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.